How many of you have ever loved someone? Well, that's good to know. How many of you have fallen in love in your life? That number seems to be lower than the other one. How many found yourself in love with someone after a while? It wasn't so in the beginning. Yeah. Okay. All are right answers, by the way. Now, how many of you found yourselves loving someone because it was a demand or a command? Oh my goodness. You saw that? Let me tell you what's in my notes, okay? It says maybe one or two, but please talk to me after the service. I didn't know it was going to be my wife. That's going to have to be a long conversation. But in the text today, Jesus is saying, I command you, I demand that you love one another. So there seems to be something skewed about that. To demand that someone love, it seems almost forced, contrived, not genuine. If we're doing it because it's a command and a demand. Is it real love when someone follows a command and falls in love or begins to love? In the church, we are commanded to love one another. And if you've been around church long enough, you realize, thank God, He commanded. Because many of us are not lovable. That was late, John. You are commanded to love me. And by God, I've been commanded to love you. And I know it's hard for me too. As it is hard for you. So we have to wrestle with this passage today because Jesus, He's saying something good to His disciples through that whole chapter. We covered some of that last week. But He seems to be making love a command rather than something that happens. For most of us, love is based on a feeling, right? I grow into love, or I grow out of love, I fall in love. It's based on how you feel about someone. And there comes a time where that feeling goes away and then there's nothing there. Some people are not looking at me. Okay. People sometimes will love you just because of what they can get or what feelings they stir up within you. So we feel warm and, dare I say, fuzzy and nice. Because we love someone or they love us and it stirs up some good feelings. Until we rub that person up the wrong way. Then it stirs up some other kinds of feelings. You understand what I mean? When we say something out of line or we do something out of line. They feel bad about you or even about themselves when you tell the truth. And then it feels like to them, it feels like to me, that we don't love that person anymore. Because they don't make us feel love anymore. And it happens. It happens in relationships. It happens in institutions. So not just with couples, but it happens in institutions. Now with couples, we have a lot of songs to fall back on. We put on love songs, and suddenly it stirs up this kind of warm feeling. Don't look down, Christina. And it makes us feel nice, and it's stirred up again. The low music, the candles, you know what I'm talking about, right? No? Okay, we'll have to do some classes in romance. You know that song that says, when I fall in love, it will be forever. And if you're feeling down, just sing that song. And you will feel something because of the voice. Who sings it?
Etta James, I believe.
Okay, a few people sing it, but it just sounds. And they sing it in the jazz style, which I'm not going to attempt to try. Oh, there's another song that says, you make me feel brand new. Yeah, some people are dating themselves. Which says, God bless you. You make me feel brand new, for God blessed me with you. You make me feel brand new. Did I do okay?
Yep.
All right. This one knows that sometimes. But you know, so we have props to make us to stir up these feelings so that we can feel like we're in love. We don't have so much of that for love in institutions, unfortunately. Besides singing songs in the church that speaks of binding us together, or we are joined together and we shall meet at some point. But that whole feeling that goes with love also is what defines how we feel about church. And Jesus is looking at the future, and he knows that that is what's going to be happening. He knows the disciples he chose. He knows that some of them will be rubbing each other up the wrong way. He knows that when they hit the streets, there'll be people that don't like them. He knows that carnality will step in, and something that is not love will take the place of love, because it's based on what we can get from those in church that we love. I was in a church a while back, and I remember that when I went to this church, it was a little church, and we started just loving. The people didn't take long for people to love each other. They had gone through some kind of conflict. People to love me, and me to love the people dearly. It was well documented. The synod marveled at it. The congregation doubled. It wasn't so big, so it was even double. But it doubled in size in 6 months. There were articles written about it. The Lutheran church with a twist. If you Google Metro Lutheran, being church, a welcoming church, or Metro Lutheran, Terrance, Jacob, you'll still find it. It's an old article from 2014. There's this whole article about how someone experienced love when he came to the church, and he found that love, and it carried him through even as he went to prison. But after about 3 years, the synod pulled its money of support from that church, and because the doubled number that was there in the pews were not people who had money, I had to leave. The synod asked me to leave. And I remember this one Sunday, after I had received a call somewhere else. That morning I met with the council to say, by the way, this is where I'm going. They were shocked. I announced that to the congregation later. By the end of the service, a representative of the council stood up and said, because I had given them 1 month's notice, which is required or suggested. So I was going to be with them for a month. They stood up and said, no, Pastor, today is your last Sunday. We won't be needing you after this. So what happened to all that love? Yeah. When we don't have love based on what Jesus said love should be, unconditional love, love that is not just based on a feeling of sentiment, when circumstances change, that love, so-called love, is under threat. And if it's happening to you, then maybe go back to Scripture and hear the command of the Lord to love one another even as Christ loved us. Now, how did Christ love us? Not because we are lovable. Christ loved us because He wanted something for us. The other day I was talking to someone and she said, you know, I've been praying to the Lord to send me someone to love me. She's in her 60s. She says, I haven't given up. I pray that God will find someone to love me. So as gently as I could, I said, well, maybe you're praying the wrong prayer. She said, what do you mean? I thought, whatever we ask. I said, yes, but God will ask you to pray this way. Lord, find me someone that I can love. Sounds different. Sounds odd. But that's what Jesus is commanding. Love one another. It's not talking about you going into a church so that you can be loved. I say this many times, that we come to church not because we can feel comfortable, warm, fuzzy, and I use the word fuzzy too many times. So, but I do genuinely feel that, and this is not a joke. But if we come to church because of the feeling that it conjures up and stirs up, it's going to be like building a house of shifting sand. Because the wind will blow, and trust me, it will blow. The honeymoon will die. This week marks the second year, the first Sunday of the second year of my call here. Today, last week, during this week, was 1 year since I've been pastor. The honeymoon is almost over. Some of you will argue, I thought it was over 6 months ago. So trust me, the fizz goes out of champagne. Roses, no matter how beautiful they are in the vase, they don't last forever. Candles don't burn forever. Most things material don't last forever. Love that Jesus talks about is a love that's eternal, it's unconditional, because it's not based on feeling, it's not based on who we are and how deserving we are. It's based on Jesus wanting to love you. I want to love that way. It's risky, but that's the way I want to love. Trust me, I'm not there. But that is what we should be asking God for in our lives as we interact with each other as church. If you ask God for that kind of love in your relationship, it might sound risky, but that is what will carry you through. To speak to those people who are still in love or still love each other after years and years and decades, whether they consciously asked or not, but they have learned to follow that command, to love someone unconditionally. Not because of how they feel, not because of how that person makes them feel, but just simply because they've learned to love someone. Period. Not because. If you go to a retreat place that is outside of Durban, in 1985 I wrote under a bunk bed because I was on camp there. Love is not a feeling, it's an act of the will. Love is not a feeling, it's an act of the will. I've been telling myself that now since 1985. And I'm still not getting it. Because we all want that feeling. This is who we are as human beings. The five senses become what helps us define our reality. The act of the will is outside of the five senses. And we shouldn't even call it a sixth sense. Because it's not about how we feel, how we sense it. It's about us deciding to love. So as we interact together, we should be asking ourselves, have we decided? I know there's a song that says, I have decided to follow Jesus. And that's good, that's fine. But when Jesus was asked what was the greatest commandment, what did he say? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your being. And the second is just like the first, which is love your neighbor as you love yourself. The same kind of love. Have you decided to love your brothers and sisters? To love those in your community? To love those that God puts in our path in a way that God loves us? Because it's not a feeling, it's an act of the will. Amen.